Hi, welcome everybody to another episode of CEOpen Mic. Today my guest is Josh Gibbs, and even though PlayAIO, the company that he recently founded, is still quite new, I think the industry will talk a lot about you pretty soon. So Josh, nice to have you.
Pleasure to be on, Bartek.
Could you say a few words about what the company is doing? Like, what's the puzzle about?
Yeah. So PlayAIO was founded to make data simple. In reality, data is a complicated structure, and a lot of people love to make it even more complicated than it really is. PlayAIO is founded to make data and actionable decisions out of the data. I think a lot of people get into the detail way too soon, and in reality, actionable decisions is what's needed, and that's where we focus. Identify issues and how you can take an action on it, be it AI, be it machine learning, be it just reporting. That's where we kind of fit.
All right, it just triggered like all of the red flags there could be. I mean, don't get me wrong, but whenever I talk to people from iGaming industry, let's say on a trade show like Sigma Malta, uh, if somebody uses in one sentence words like AI, machine learning, data, big data, let's put some blockchain into it. Why not? It's a red flag for me that is there really a value underneath? Like, is it just talking and sales pitch, or is it real value somewhere?
I mean, you missed one, which is Web3, which is the other one that people tend to
Yeah.
talk about too, right? Look, like I'll be honest, right? It's not going to revolutionize the industry, but it's the computational power that it kind of puts in. And I think
Hmm.
a lot of people use it because it's not fun for a sales guy to talk about computational power, like, oh, 10,000 tasks in a second, right? But in reality, that's the situation. I think when when you look at sort of machine learning, when you're looking at reporting, it's the amount of headcount you need to understand where there's an issue. And I
Hmm.
think I don't see AI as a big, huge innovation. It's not going to revolutionize the industry to sort of something unrecognizable. It just means you can start to actually take a step back and
Hmm.
actually start to think about what the actions you should be taking because you're no longer having to do repetitive tasks. The simplest way I describe it to everyone that is cynical about AI, it's the same as before there was Excel, there was quants, right? And they were basically human beings that were able to work out maths in the head excessively fast. Then you had Excel, then you had actually accountants. You never lost the need of someone to be able to work out maths in their
Hmm.
head. But in
Hmm.
reality, those guys became even more prominent because they can actually understand and work things back. And I think when you look at iGaming, it's even more thorough now than it was before because you see so many problems in the industry is actually not related to the problem has changed, but you just have a sheer amount of data. And imagine like you're looking at billion transactions in one go. How do you know what to focus on? But
Hmm.
if you can narrow down that focus into using machine learning to narrow down the focus, you can actually start to build a comprehensive answer which makes sense to people that do not understand the data and should not understand that level of
Hmm.
data, right?
Hmm.
It's just where's my problem? What's the solution? And how can we take action? That's where we see sort of the buzzwords of the industry sort of changing a lot more.
Yeah, but the real need will always stay. But what's your take on the how do I put it, the maturity of the market? Because as far as I know, to be able to draw any conclusions from the data, you gotta gather the data first, right?
Yep.
Um, and my impression is that a lot of operators they talk about data a lot, but they don't really gather it. Not to say any kind of decision taking process based on the data. Um, so, with your experience, your knowledge, you talk to a lot of people in the industry about it. What's the average operator's status on that at the moment?
Like I think you hear it a lot. I mean, in the US, I think it's become more obvious given the investors' sort of investment. It's kind of this word, this term of like own your own tech stack, right? That's in reality just owning your own database. So I think we're
Hmm.
still in the early stages of the journey that is within data, I think. And I think this is the biggest issue is when you get some C levels taking decisions that are based on we need to be in personalization, we need to be in this before you even got to the point of understanding do we have a live data stream. do we have an ability to act on that data stream in a real time basis? And I think, in my experience and in my knowledge, people are still in very early areas of that. I would say there's niches. So if you take, like, you look at sportsbook, right? The way that odds are changed is, I mean, is purely down to sort of machine learning models now. It's very minimal input from traders. That is an industry that changed quite rapidly, but in terms of how that the interaction with customers, it's still in the early stages of people understanding how to break out the data, what tools to use, what actions can you take. I think that's still in the early stages.
All right. And trying to break all the buzzwords, like as I said earlier, I'm frankly speaking, I'm sick and tired of people who use the word data in every single sentence, and basically
Mm-hmm.
nothing comes out of it.
Yeah.
Um, what's the could you give us the example of a real decision taken by the operator based on data, and how the process looked like from your perspective, and that decision would not be taken if there was no analysis underneath.
Yeah. I mean, the easiest way is with high value players, right? I
Mhm.
had to be careful not to use one word that I'm not meant to use because of the UKGC now, right? But with high value players, right? If I'm a high value player and I'm betting a lot of money on a sports book or on a casino, why the old methodology is just put in a ticket and our customer service team based out in a different country will resolve it, right? But when you take that and you put it on its flip side and you go into the banking sector, I've spent a long time out in Hong Kong and other places, right? When you go there with a lot of money, you get someone that's speaking to you, reacting to your transactions on a real time basis, right? So the most simplest way, I think, obviously, when you go to banking, it's a lot, there's maybe less customers in the sense, and they have more money. But when you
Mhm.
go to casino, the way you can react on that is ultimately reacting to their transactions in real time. If you see a player that should have had a jackpot that paid out, and an average jackpot should pay out within 5 to 7 seconds. If it hasn't paid out, why do you have to wait? You know this. You already have the data stream there. You already have it real time, right? So
Mhm.
why are you still expecting your customer to actually still proactive, like preemptively put in a ticket and go through the same process as every other customer?
Mhm.
That's honestly the real way that data can help. It's the simplest way, right? But there are obviously more complicated journeys that you can go on with customers. But I think the biggest ethos that I have towards customers and towards everything that we do at sort of PlayAIO is is imagine going into a casino and you have a VIP host, right? When you have the VIP host, they know everything about you, what you
True.
do, where you sleep, which side of the bed you sleep on, which drink you want, which if you want cigars, which cigar you want, right? They know that even before you've set foot in the casino.
Mhm. Mhm.
But then when it comes to the online space, we're still very much in the infancy in terms of how much we actually know about the customer, despite we sit on that much data. We know in that situation, we know more about it's just connecting different systems that were once
Mhm.
VAP management, CRM management, customer service. They're all different systems. It's about bringing everything together. That's the simplest way I can put it, really,
Mhm. And
before I bored your brains out.
no, actually, you're talking to the to the IT guy. So,
Yeah.
how the process look like from the technical perspective? I mean, you sign up the deal with the operator,
Hmm.
uh, then, well, that's me just guessing, but I suppose you just take a look around on the databases they already have from the, let's say, CRM, from the
Hmm.
whatever system they have. But do you tend to create your own instances of the databases just on the side of it, just for the analysis purposes, or how does it work?
Yeah, so I mean, look, like first things first, we always look towards the stream of data. If we
Mhm.
can get it in real time, it's a lot easier, right? A lot of people will talk from this industry about, yeah, we do real time, and then they'll go send you straight towards SFTP transfers and daily transfers, right? Which is
Mhm.
not that valuable.
Mhm.
Where the way we come at it from is going direct to source. Can we ingest direct from you guys? Can we ingest into our database? Then we have a database structure that we can understand, we can manage, and we can control, right? That
Mhm.
database doesn't take any PII or GDPR because we don't need it, right? We understand that Bartek doesn't need to be called Bartek, it's just player one, right? But we know everything about you based
Mm-hmm.
on your patterns, right? And then from then on, we start to understand, okay, because usually we ingest about 6 months, 6 to 3 months of data, we already understand what your patterns are like and where, and then we start to break everything out into chunks. So whether it be registration through what the player journey is, whether it be sort of how that those players are reacting and sort of we call it player life cycle. So in that sort of situation, and then we break it out into anomaly detection as well. So anomaly detection is just how is your platform performing. There's a lot of situations where people will chuck money at something, but in reality, the platform can't actually handle what you want, or maybe the bet rejections are just too high that there's no amazing bonus campaign you can give them that's not going to piss them off. So I think it's just breaking them out into little chunks and then sub chunking that into sort of the little
Mm-hmm.
sections that is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's all based on my experience. That is just how looking at a problem from a very top down approach is you're always going to chuck money on it and hope what sticks and then think, oh, that's what fixed it, right? But in reality, the way we're trying to help people to understand is this area is your problem. This is where we can see your biggest problem is now. This is what you need to do to action it. So it's this industry has a very easy it's a very easy journey for people to say, oh, everyone needs game recommendation, right? Because this is big
Mm-hmm.
buzz right now.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, from my view anyway, game recommendation is the final piece of the puzzle, right? That's the end of the journey type of situation. But in
Mm-hmm.
reality, have you got your fundamentals down? Do you know how much value that player is going to bring in? Can I determine what my bonus should be based on the value rather than based on let me just chuck it out and hope it sticks? Do I know when you're going to churn? And all of these factors come into okay, what we can do as a solution for you guys rather than just going let me just do everything, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that I think is the biggest reason for a lot of skepticism in the industry. It's kind of everyone quotes the same thing. Everyone says, "Oh, churn model prediction benefits you like 20%. Game recommendation uplifts you by 7% in GGR." Right? It doesn't because every customer is different, and that was our USP, and that still is treating every customer how their data wants us to treat it really. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
thing. Like I've worked with VIP books which in reality, game recommendation wouldn't do anything for them. Just chucking individual personalized VIP managers probably would have been better for them. And
Mm-hmm.
and that's where we try and tailor the data journey based on the customer and where they're at. There will be customers. I mean, you're looking at Latin America and you're looking at Africa, right? There will be customers there that don't even need any AI. They just need reporting. They need to do the basics
Mm-hmm.
first, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where the conversation, and that's where a lot of what I'm trying to do, even talking to you and talking to a lot of people, is just not trying to re-educate people because people have been in this industry a lot longer than I have, but it's trying to make sure that people understand, like, don't fall for the buzz in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make sure it benefits your bottom line before it benefits like the provider that you're working with's bottom line, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Be product
Mm-hmm.
focused, really, and that's where we come at it from.
All right, all right, all right. That well, you bought me, so um, if I were an operator, I would definitely talk to you. Um,
We'll speak
let's
after the
let's
call, right?
um, let's take a look a little bit about on your company. I mean, as I said in the very beginning, you're quite fresh on the market. You only founded
Mhm.
the company like what a year ago, I think.
Yeah, it's about 9 months ago now. We founded it in sort of, it was actually the 5th of March, 5th of March, because it was right bang on my 30th birthday. So it was a fun 30th, right?
So I cannot help but to ask, like, why on earth would you do it? I mean, you had a steady job before doing it. You probably made decent money with all your knowledge and experience. And then you hit 30, and you're like, screw it. I wanna risk it all. I wanna have sleepless nights. Talk to dumb people like me, and, just to promote the company. I mean, why would you do it? Why did you start PlayAIO?
I mean, I think it was, if I'm being honest, it was a pure and simple situation of we just and this is no disrespect to anyone that's doing it, but we just didn't feel that anyone's doing it in the right way. I felt like at the time I was obviously working at a PAM at Strive Gaming when I was there, and ultimately we knew about a lot of the data providers out there, and ultimately the what everyone was doing and how they were reacting, and it's like, but no one was changing the conversation. And I think what frustrated me the most is there are some genius tech people that I've managed to work with along the way, and what seems to help companies stand out is just being able to have a foothold on their data. It's not, it's, look, let's just be honest, right? It's never going to be everything going to be data driven, right? You always need a little bit of gut feel. Every owner I ever speak to says like you can't tell everything with data, right?
Of course.
But it's that situation at the moment. There's a stat, right? There's marketing still is sort of 70% gut feel and 30% data, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think from my perspective, it was maybe, I mean, one, I was young enough, so let's just, I can survive no sleep for a little bit longer, right? And two, it's also that situation of if I don't give this a go now, I think the industry is just going to keep going in this circle of kind of going round and round of everyone taking the next best thing, and then the cycle will change again after 3 years. And I think it was just that time where we felt okay, myself and my co-founder Stephen Faruja, we just sort of we sat down and out of pure frustration we were like there must be a way to sort of fix this, and you can't just keep allowing this to happen and have to listen to the same pitches again and again. And it's just like I suppose I'm a bit cynical as I am, but it was one of those sort of situations where I was like I can't be bothered to listen to another pitch like this again. There must be a better way. So that was it, and to be honest, it's been a lot of sleepless nights, but I truly am passionate about what we talk about. So it hasn't been as bad as it's been bad, but not as bad as I expected, I suppose.
um, I think you're the first founder I talked to who said that my company is basically frustration-driven company, at least at the very beginning. um, but on a little bit more serious side, I remember us talking. We've met in Malta and Sigma, and I remember when I asked you when you founded the company, you actually tried to take some investors on board, and
Hmm.
you only said back then that, oh man, don't get me started. That's
Hmm.
I got a bunch of stories here. Is it that bad?
It's not, look, like I think there's a re. I used to look at like investor relations and think like, okay, what is the actual role of someone in investor relations? And
Hmm.
you wonder why when a company goes public, they're paying a lot of money for investor relations, right? It's a full-time job, and I think when you're trying to grow, I think like there's so much. Try and control my language to not swear all the time. But when there's so much stuff out there about run your own business, become your own founder, grow
Hmm.
a $1 billion business in a year, I think a lot of people think it's easy when you're going to find investors, and but I think a lot of people forget that there's a lot of politics in the background that you don't ever get told about. There's a lot of again, are you in buzz right now? Like obviously everyone talked about AI when we first started, but I think now people, as you said, like people are sort of getting like, really, like
Hmm.
is this the right thing? I mean, off camera I can talk about some of the stories that we were told about drinking games and pitching, but yeah, I think that it's just not an easy role
Hmm.
to kind of fill, and obviously when you're trying to start a business as well, when you're trying to keep sort of tech guys positive, keep the product going forward whilst also seeing the money. It's a balancing act, and I think there's a lot of people that I've spoken to before and even now that I've called very good friends that have said that if you can bootstrap, I would always, especially at the start, I would always advise. I mean, I'm speaking to enough people now that I think we were a rarity in that industry to get seed round funding or pre-seed round funding. I think that's what's called now. But a lot more people, I think maybe it will change. I mean, it probably will, but in the 2020s, you had a lot of money flung into the industry. And obviously, you can see it very publicly in the US, in Australia, in Europe. Investors are looking to get a return. So
Mhm.
now they're de-risking their investment. So they're going to Series A. And then so trying to prove no matter how good the relationship you've got with some of these guys, it's a full-time gig. And I think it is true. Like I was watching some podcast with Jeff Bezos was talking about he took 66 meetings to get the first 1 million of Amazon, right? And this is
Mhm.
Amazon, a multi-billion dollar business, right? And I think that was for 20% of the business.
Mhm.
And for he got 22 people to sign up, but you just imagine how many emails he sent. Like for a
Yeah.
conversion rate, it's probably sent 1,000 emails. So that means finding 1,000 people to actually that have the money to invest. And
Mhm.
again, in the gambling industry, it's even smaller pool of
Yeah.
people. So I think it's not an easy thing. And I'd say to any investor, like always make sure you. It's also making sure you don't need the money, but you actually have a plan for the money.
Mhm.
Because I
Mhm.
think once you go in there, I use an English saying, right? Trousers down, like going, okay, we need the money. Then, no matter how good your plan is, you still always end up having to give up quite a bit of equity in your business for
Mhm.
something that maybe is still a risk, and obviously they're valuing their risk as well. So, and I don't think there's anything bad to say on either side. Like they're obviously valuing the risk is super high, and we're valuing, and obviously you're a founder, so you think, oh, it's obviously going to work.
Of course.
So it's never an easy situation.
Right. But do you have any like from your particular experience, from the situations you've been into? I'm not. I don't really mean the investors that you get now in a company, but
Mm-hmm.
but the people that you potentially that you talk to that potentially would get into the process with you. Do you have any like major lessons learned here, like no go or never do it or always do it, or anything that people who are listening to us could like take from your experience?
Yeah, I mean, look, the simplest one is that obviously no one's going to care about your product more than you do if you're a founder, right? And and I think you have to only go into investment if you're strong enough to be able to do it. Because you have to keep hearing, no, this is never going to work. No, this is a
Hmm.
crap idea. And
Hmm.
I think ultimately you have to truly believe in what you're doing. Again, the other side of the coin, and this will be very common for a lot of developer founded, like founders, right? If you're a CTO but founder and you're a sole founder of everything, it's very hard. Make sure you narrow down and make sure you're asking the right questions to people that you trust, right?
Hmm.
Like, do you care about this? Like, because 9 times out of 10, an investor is not going to care as much as you do about the tech stack that you run on, about it's scalable and operation, like the efficiencies that you gain from it and cost effective and all of this, right? They just want to know ultimately how are you going to stand out and what are you doing differently to everything else. And I think that's the best bit of advice I can give is no
Hmm.
one no one cares about it as much as you do. So it's just finding that way, and I think you have to extend yourself to it wasn't a comfortable position to ask CEOs that I knew to say, can you be critical about this? Like, what do
Hmm.
you see that's wrong with this? And I think it's asking people what they see wrong with your product because it's so easy when you're founders, when you're in the first 6 months of growth and you're seeing the product come from nothing to something, and you're being, but it's amazing. Obviously, it's amazing. But for an investor, obviously, there's two types of an investor. There's a product-led investor that may see you as value to their product, their company, and then there's sort of more financial-led investors. And again, it's about learning the dynamics, like how dynamic it is, and keeping grinding. Really, like I was speaking to someone that has closed quite heavy amounts of money many times. And he was saying every day he's sort of trying to find roughly around about 20 to 30 emails to email out. He's only expecting one or two to reply. And then in a conversion rate, probably you're looking, even from a reply, you're looking at maybe 10% of those are actually going to convert into a meeting, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's, if I can give anyone any advice, it's not easy trying to find investment funding. It's not, these guys are not like, oh, there's light at the end of the rainbow and they're just coming with a
Mm-hmm.
big pot of gold and they're going to
Mm-hmm.
guarantee to like your idea. No, I think it is difficult, but I would say there is positives about it, right? Like so we obviously brought on Astralis Capital as an investment partner, and I think it has been what it helped us to understand. We spoke to a lot of the larger investment groups and some of the more niche ones within iGaming as well, and I think what we sort of understood from them is it really helps you to narrow down the focus of what your product is. I think when you're a founder, I can do everything,
Mm-hmm.
and you look at like a product that's doing great right now. You look at Blask, right? They're a perfect example, right? They started doing something else, and then actually through investors, through investment, through their own discovery, started to figure out, oh, actually maybe what was a side product for us is that's the way we're going to make money. And I think that's the way it is. And obviously, again, when you speak to a lot of people, would they be prepared to kind of listen to other people? Like Bartek, when we spoke, I don't think you didn't strike me as a person that would like enjoy getting someone else to say, no, this is what you need to do, or no, this is the
Mm-hmm.
way you need to go, right? Because you've
Mm-hmm.
bootstrapped every business yourself, right?
Mm-hmm. 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 And how about how much time did it take you from the moment that you took the decision that hey I need some kind of investment in
Mm-hmm.
the company to the moment where you signed up the deal? How much time was that?
It's probably around about sort of 6 months, I think, when you're reaching the initial subjects.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like 6 months is fast for some
Yeah, yeah.
investment groups. Like I've heard other conversations at 2 years. Um, I've heard some sort of 3 years. I've heard some that kind of are still ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's because again, there are sometimes conditions in the investment, which is you reach this level of revenue, then yes, we'll invest. And here's the contract to make sure that you feel certain, but the stress to kind of get to that level is
Yeah.
quite heavy, right?
Yeah, and I'm asking about that time because I can only imagine. I've never took any kind of investment in any of my companies, but I can imagine that this is extremely difficult time, personally for you because you have no, at least that's my imagination. You don't really have that sense of stability. You don't really know because if you're gonna receive an email saying you're in, let's sign it today and let's do it tomorrow, then your entire life gonna change, and you're gonna put all your efforts into that, especially because you're now responsible. For it's not just you. You also wanna keep your promises to the people who believed in you. But at the same time, I can imagine that at the same time, as the time passes, you kind of lose your energy, and you're like, oh my god, I already sent like hundreds of emails. I had hundreds of meetings and hundreds of fake promises and my favorite, oh my god, it's so interesting, but let's talk about it once you're gonna get some traction. That's my favorite response. um, so how did you survive that time? I mean, what did you do? How did you like handle it?
I mean, like I've been through quite a bit of adversity in my life anyway, so it's just if you want to be a founder, I think it's the true test of do you want to do it, yes or no. I think like
Mm-hmm.
I think a VC and investment and all of this will really grind you down towards an extent where you will be able to prove to yourself, do you want to do it or
Mm-hmm.
do you not? Right. And I think, and that's where I say to some people, like, if you're trying to build a product for a company to float, to sell, it may be best just to bootstrap it with just two of you, three of you, finding friends, and then just do it that way because it is hard. I think, like, yeah, at times, I'll be honest, right? We're all a free, like, meant to be honest about our emotions and all this stuff type of feeling, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, at times you almost do feel it's going to break you I think with investment, it's so difficult because you're spending so much time in the sky, saying like, oh, there's going to be like a 5 million investment, and then we can do everything we want to do, and
Mhm.
then you're scoping it out with your tech leads and your head of tech, and you're going like, oh, this money will change us. We'll sort of, and I think because that's a lot of the issue is at the start you're just trying to, it's the chicken and egg scenario. You need to find customers, but and you need to build a product to find customers, but you need customers to build a product, right? And then you're like, oh, investors, and then you're like, oh, but that will help me build the product, make it perfect, and then I can sign the biggest customers out there, right? And I think that's what breaks you. Well, what broke me probably the most is you're so aspirational, and I
Mhm.
think then, and you see it with a lot of founders actually. There were a lot in 2020 that almost can't run a business really because
Mhm.
they were given so much money at the start when in reality they probably, because you can actually ask for less, right? You say, oh, you value me this, I'll give you this many shares. But in reality, yeah, that is some of the biggest issue is you end up being so, this is what we could do. And then when you're sort of maybe getting less than what you expected, you're like, oh, now we have to dampen our expectations, or
Mhm.
we need to build a product that we didn't want to build in the first place that's not revolutionary just to get some money coming in. I think that it's a real difficulty, and I think it really does test. And obviously, like for us, we obviously it made us reevaluate: do we want investment again? And I
Mhm.
think that we're always open to the right partner, but I think we're not. We're sort of, we have an ethos now more for kind of like dr- drive with the customers and grow with your customers. So a lot of
Mhm.
our products that we're bringing out are more sort of us working, collaborating, partnering with customers and with everyone that we know we can trust. But it's,
Mhm.
I think anyone going out there these days that thinks like there's 5 to 10 million for a pre-revenue business, you really need to be either have a huge network of people that truly trust you and you've been C level before, uh, or you have to have the most revolutionary business in the industry. But it's not just about being revolutionary. You also need to be able to explain it in such a
Mhm.
way, which I think is very hard in this industry because you're like, it's the same ethos as like what Airbnb had when they came out, right? Everyone
Mhm.
thought that the business was never going to be what it is, and a lot of the VC firms said that will never work. No one's ever going to go away from hotels.
Mhm.
I think I was speaking to a VC earlier this week actually, and they sort of said like it's just, I think when you're building tech-based businesses and you're trying to find funding, it's a lot of luck because you need to find the VC at the right time because a lot of tech-based businesses like you're going to get towards their CTO, their tech organization, and they can say, actually, if you invested that much in us, we would be able to build it.
Mhm.
And I think that's where, because obviously every tech person wants to do something unique. No one wants to be doing, especially from data, right? A lot of data teams are taken up by operational and regulatory reporting, right? These are difficult things, but they're not fun by any shape of imagination. So I think it's that ethos where it's very difficult to kind of get it in. So it is just a numbers game, really. I mean, it's just
Mhm.
getting yourself out there, putting yourself into very uncomfortable situations at meetings that you really don't feel. I'll be honest, right? I didn't feel like I belonged at the very early stages. You're sort of like, yeah, I came from head of data at sort of Strive and was head of partner success at head of partner support at Canby. But I mean, like, I've never. You sort of you grow into that role, and I think the positive I will say about going to investors early days is you, because you get invited to the meetings quite early doors, you understand how a C level speaks, and they all
Mhm.
do speak in a different language. They
Mhm.
don't they don't speak like operational guys speak. They're just saying, look, I don't have time for this. So what's the benefit?
Mhm.
What are you selling me? And how's it gonna change my business? It's not gonna
Mhm.
change my business. Okay, bye.
Mhm.
And the meetings like that you turn up to with the investors is, they're not as, an operational guy would be nice and because they put themselves in your shoe, right? A C level, they might turn up for 5 minutes and just leave, or just like I had that experience with some founders and some potential investors, like the weirdest one, just like turning up at all different times and having to
Mm-hmm.
repitch at the same time, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not easy by any shape of the imagination. So if anyone
Mm-hmm.
takes anything from this thing of what I'm talking about, it's just don't think of it as okay, my oracle. That's the only way we're going to survive as a business. It's not easy. Otherwise, everyone would be creating businesses with VC funds. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we are successful and we really pushed and killed ourselves to get where we are. But again, it's a lot of luck. It's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of getting the right network, having the people that can open the doors, and again, building that level of trust with the investors and advisors that they do believe in you. Because pre-seed, pre-revenue,
Yeah.
it's a lot of BS, right? Like there's no one can tell me like, yes, this business is going to make it and this business
Mm-hmm.
won't. Like there's some
Mm-hmm.
very good businesses that fail.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit more about the era, like the post-investment era. So,
Mm-hmm.
because it strikes me that at the very first stage, you basically focus like 90% of your energy goes into obtaining any kind of investment.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but then again, I hear a lot of horror stories from the people that already got lucky. They already got an investor, and
Mm-hmm.
this is where all the trouble starts. I'm not
Yeah.
sure if you're gonna be honest with me right now. um, so let me put the question. Let me rephrase it. Um, so how does it look like after you signed the deal, after you onboarded the investors to the company? Uh, how does it look like? I mean, do you have any kind of KPIs you gotta deliver? Do you have any kind of monitoring body that just watches you? Like, what's the reality?
Again, like it does depend on the investor. I think, and this is really where you need to be. This is probably the hardest thing about getting investment, right? You get them to sign on a dotted line, or you get them to the contract, right?
Hmm.
But you still have to take a step back and say, as much as we need the money, do I want that person on my
Hmm.
business? And
Hmm.
I think a lot of the people that have had the horror stories, they've kind of they sort of said, well, I need the money now because you get taken through these 9 months of struggles, and then they
Right.
take on someone that they had a gut feel that said, oh, yeah, I'm not too sure on this person. Right.
Hmm.
And I think from our perspective, like when we brought on Australis, they've been amazing for us, right? We brought them on as a we looked and evaluated the business and realized where the gaps in our business were. So
Hmm.
yes, myself and Steve are very operational individuals. We know how to run this and make this work, right? But from a financial perspective, an investment perspective, a PR perspective, even learning how these investors speak, and also M&A and all of these other aspects, we've never been in these meeting rooms. We've never
Hmm.
been in that. So Astralis were kind of brought on to provide advice on the business and really help us to understand. Okay, we know what our customers are asking us, but what's the industry actually saying? So that was a blessing for us. It was very lit. They were there when we wanted them to be there, and they were there. They were gone when we didn't want them to be there. And I think, but again, we were very careful with who we took on, and I think even looking at investment again, if we ever did go down that route, it needs to be a partnership of synergy. Like
Hmm.
I feel the best investment comes when you have they have a product or they have a company that's willing to work and partner with you. Now again, you have to change your roadmap for them because they just invested. So that's something you need to be prepared for and ready for. But again, at least it's building that trust. Once they've got been signed off, once they've been checked out, like then it's that situation that they're there as your amazing spokesman because they've used your product, they know it works, they know the benefits of it, and they're invested as well. So I think you can get that situation, but the horror stories, I believe, come when there's conflicting. Again, my personal belief, they come when you desperately need the money,
Hmm.
because then
Hmm.
you get the investors that no one really not no one wants. Obviously, I don't want to be harsh to everyone in this industry, but you get the investors that maybe their goals and their ambitions don't align with yours. So the easiest horror story that everyone should ask an investor is how long do you see this investment lasting for you guys, right?
Mhm.
So, like, it's where do you see this going? And if you're a sort of Series A round, right? You need to be honest about that, because if they want to sell you within 1 year because they want their money back and they want to invest, and that's the way they invest, they're just consistent, then you need to understand, okay, going back to the questions, going back to the relationship that you have with them, is what what is it that you're going to bring to the table other than just money that can help us to get this sale quickly? And again,
Mhm.
it comes down to, do you want to sell? Because I
Mhm.
think a lot of
Mhm.
the negative press and negative stuff surrounding investors is like, actually the founder took it on because he was in desperate need of the money, but he didn't really want to sell, or she, right? And they were sort of in a situation where it was. I feel negative situations come when you feel lost, right? When you feel
Mhm.
like, I don't control my company anymore. Um, so I feel like, thankfully, I haven't experienced the negative investment yet. But from what I understand, it's very much like the personalities are very dominant. They want to drive this forward, not. And again, it's not just challenging, because you want that. You want your shareholders, your investors, to challenge you to think differently.
Mhm.
They've been
Mhm.
brought there because they add value. Otherwise, it's not just money.
Mhm.
But again, it's a way of, are they happy to discuss? Are they happy to understand? Or are they just there to make a quick buck? And if they are, does that align with you?
Mhm.
And if it
Mhm.
doesn't, maybe, yeah, you have to scale down the business and survive for longer. But if you keep waiting around, and you wait long enough, but you have to really be putting everything into this,
Mhm.
you can find the right investors to work with you. But again, it's just hard, I think, for a lot of people. And a lot of people in this industry, I think, have glamorized the M&As and getting acquired, and just be in a business for 3 years and get purchased. I think, whilst that's an amazing situation, it's not always realistic for everyone. So you have to love what you do as well. It's just like, okay, I'm coming in for the money.
Mhm. 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 So once you onboarded the investor, I suppose there is some roadmap for the company that you set up, that you presented to investor. Everybody is like happy with the roadmap. My understanding is that everybody kind of understands that, if you sleep for 1 or 2 months with delivering whatever, then it's kind of normal in the business. Um, but then there is a day where you have to take the hat off, where the hat. I'm looking for the investor, and you gotta put the hat on, which says, now I'm the manager of my company.
Hmm.
Um, and so looking at my understanding is that PlayAIO is a services company. It's not really a product company, right? So what's your plan? Am I correct here, by the way?
No, so we are a product based company. So we
Oh,
build
okay.
products, and basically it's a simpler like SaaS based model, right? We build
Right.
the products, and then basically we kind of customers come in. So we do adapt and evolve the product to fit other
Mhm.
clients' needs. But again, it just allows us to kind of keep bringing on. It's a lift and shift sort of methodology.
Right, right, right. Okay, okay, I get it. So what's your plan about hiring people? Like, what's the first positions that you're gonna or already did hire,
Mhm.
and why would that be?
I mean, look, I've always had an ethos surrounding hiring, which is uh, you hire core. Every company needs core pillars, right? And the founders can't just be core pillars of the business, otherwise it's going to fail, right?
Mhm.
So you need the core pillars. They don't have to come in CEO, CPO, CTO, and all of this stuff, right? But you need to have the core pillars of any business to basically grow that business, and they need to be trusted. So I believe you had someone. I honestly, the name slips my mind, but you had someone on that sort of said, we only hire people that have been recommended to us, right?
Mhm. 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 Mhm.
And I think when you're building those core pillars, I will 100% agree. Right? It's You build with trust, because even, yes, maybe they're not as qualified as, say, someone that's gonna ask for, like, gonna be there. But if you can trust them, then you can build pillars around them and also grow them. And I
Mhm.
think that's whenever we focused on hiring, which we've hired a few people now, and obviously we're in that quite nice growth stage. But I think whenever you build that sort of ethos, it's very easy for you to then build in your culture, your ethos of the business of work hard. We're here. Look at what you're here to do. You can be transparent with them about customers, about sales, about product. You build that ethos within the business so that there's not this us and them method. And I'm a big believer in trust, right? If I've hired someone to come underneath me, I've really got to trust them, because I'm not a micromanager. I never will be. I've always been a situation of give you projects. I expect you to kill yourself just as much as I would. And I think that's where, once you have those core pillars in place, you can hire underneath. And then that's when you can start to look at cheaper resource. You can start to make your investors happier because you're reducing your cost, right? But if those core pillars aren't there, I don't care where they are in the world. They could be remote. They could be in Asia, in Africa, America. Doesn't matter. If you've got people that you can trust that can build a product for you and with you, then the recruitment becomes easier, because then you've already placed your method, your ethos, your ideology of the business onto these pillars, and then they become sort of your spokesman of everything. It's almost the ethos of marketing, right? You create your super users, and then those super users just filter down, right? That's the way I've always believed in companies, and I think that's when you build and bring people on the journey, you can have a smaller group of people so that even when you do scale, everyone scales with you, but everyone knows why they're on this journey with you. And I think when you're I can't say from experience when you're a huge multi-conglomerate that will work, because I've
Not
never
yet.
been there, right? But I can certainly say from a startup and the companies that I've seen work, that is what works. There's a group, there's a community of people that are in that inner circle, that are trusted beyond all belief, and they are given the ability to make decisions. So again, you have, as a CEO, as a founder, I don't believe that I should make every decision. It shouldn't be, because I don't know enough about everything in this business. My goal is to make sure that I empower the right people to take the decision at the right time. And I put only the barriers that are going to break the business there. So that's it. And I think that's comes into when you're recruiting other people, when you're putting new tools into the platform, right? If they know how you think and they know why you're being the way you are, it really doesn't matter. You can trust when they say the one liner of we need this tool because of X. Okay, you've considered my feeling, you can consider the business, you've considered how I'm going to think about it. Why would I say no? Like, you don't need me on this call. Like, I don't need to. I've never been a person that wants to be on every single call with every partner that we've ever worked with just to say, yeah, the CEO is going to sign off. Like, it makes no sense. And I think that's it. All comes back to that the pillars of the business. And I think, and you look at like bigger organizations, how they've grown. You look at like, I mean, we base ourselves very closely on smaller organizations that are $1 billion businesses, right? So you've got you've got like Pinterest, right? There are 32 people within that business, but they're $1 billion business. How did they build it? Because everyone was built to be, there's core people that know the founder, know what they're doing, and then anyone underneath that comes in, it doesn't matter. Like, it's not that they don't matter to the business, but that they are now the responsibility of that person to make sure that the same ethos. And I think that means you can keep layering and making sure that you can grow underneath without the need of, I need to interview everyone, because it's not scalable. And also, when you want to scale up and scale down very quickly, you become the blocker. So a lot of these companies, especially in data, the biggest issue becomes, okay, we can only fit you into our pipeline in July, right? And sort of situation like this. But in reality, if you're not the one that says I need to be on every recruitment call, but if you trust that person is going to make the right decision. You can say, look, it's within budget, it's within this, finance is happy, I'm happy, everyone. You don't need me to approve. If you think that that person's the right one, I have to trust you enough. And
Mm-hmm.
again, it will be tested. There will always be times that people test you through the journey, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's just my belief.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. But before I ask the question, how many people you have on board right now within the
So
company?
we have 8 people within the business altogether, and
Right.
look, like we've always been very honest. No matter how much investment fund we ever got or look to get, it's not going to scale up just because we've got more money in the bank. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it
Oh.
needs to. It's one of those things. One of my biggest beliefs, and I say it to most of the tech people that we have on the business, is we're an AI business. We're a data business. If we can't use our data the best way to be as efficient as possible, then how the hell are we selling this to everyone else, right? It's like
True.
I don't believe that we need to be a business of say 50 or 60 people to run
Mm-hmm.
billions of transactions.
Mm-hmm.
Cloud scales, cloud has auto scaling capabilities now. If you've built the product right, why does it need so much alteration? If
Yeah.
you've integrated the right partners, you don't need to do an integration every time. Um, why do you need to hire to do another integration? Can you outsource? There's all these ethoses that you can bring in to make sure that us as a business are looking forward, still revenue generating, but are not being tied down by the fact that we need an office or we need HR or we need all of these things that come with more and more people, right?
Mm-hmm. 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 Um, I remember there was a time at Create IT's, my company, that we were getting clients who actually examined our website, and there were no errors, no mistakes, and they were like, "Okay, that's good enough for me. I mean, that means you know your business, so I want to work with you." Uh, but let's get back to the recruitment for a while, because what you just said is basically giving a lot of trust to the people. Of course, it doesn't mean that you don't watch them. It doesn't mean that you don't expect any kind of results. I really get it,
hmm
but there's this potential hole here, and I've fallen into it a couple of
hmm
times, and I just wonder what's your take on that, where you hire a person, you don't really
hmm
know that person because all you know is just the interview that you had, so everybody's super smiling, super happy, super competent on the interview, and then uh, half a year later, you just learn that is the person trustworthy? Yes. Is it an honest person? Yes. But then again, are the results good enough? Is the person giving everything they could? Yes, they do. But do they provide enough value? Nah, not really. Um, and then again, if the culture that you created is all trust driven, it's getting harder and harder to let those people go, right? Because
hmm
you know. So I just wonder if you maybe had this kind of situation already, or what's your take on that?
I mean, thankfully, we haven't had so much of this situation. I mean, look, like, I'm not going to say we haven't because there has been situations like this, but I mean, look, like I had some very good conversations with some very senior founders that have run businesses well, and I
Mhm.
think what you always have to come back to is no matter how good the relationship is, no matter how good they are as an individual, still has to come down to results. And I think there's a lot of this that he will become better or she will become better ethos, right? But I mean, you should have been able to figure that. Maybe I'm a bit harsh, but I'm truthful, right? Like I would say this to anyone that joins the company, right? I should be able to figure out if you are good or bad within the first 3 months. If I can't, then there's a problem within my process. And
Mhm.
if I don't believe that you're right for us, then my ethos is we're probably failing you because we're keeping you on
Mhm.
and you're learning bad tendencies that actually
Mhm.
doesn't it's not going to help you in your career. I'm
Mhm.
very honest with people and say, look, we're a startup, right? Every person needs to graft. Every
Mhm.
person needs to kill themselves. And this is something I'm very honest about, right? Like my wife hates me for it, but that's true. It's just what it is. We're a startup. This is what it is. Everyone kills themselves to make this
Mhm.
product, and to you, it's almost like a cult. you're running a business that everyone is singing from the same hymn sheet. That's the people you want as a startup.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, obviously, I say this as a startup founder, not as a, I think a lot of companies struggle when you get to the SME stage where you've gone from startup to small to medium-sized enterprise, right? But I think from my standpoint, it's just, you have to be honest with yourself. And I think my role at PlayAIO is to be honest with the guys and make sure that they feel empowered, whether they're a pillar or whether they're underneath, to make that decision and to feel there's no ramifications. It doesn't come back to you because you
Mm-hmm.
hired that person, they were perfect in the interview, but they just weren't right. And I
Mm-hmm.
think there are so many KPIs that you can place on individuals to not state, are you good? I get challenged this all the time by every tech person I know. You cannot place a dev's results based on what their GitLab success KPI ratio is, right? Like I get told, and every CEO that isn't dev always says, can we just not use this, right? How
Mm-hmm.
many Git commits have they done? Let's just judge them on this. But
Mm-hmm.
like, I think and I have some very good people in my organization that challenge me on this a lot, but it's using the numbers to say, can you justify this person? I can see that they haven't done much from my high level commercial and strategic mentality. I can see that this person is not doing, they're not, you're approving everything that they're doing. So really, is that trust not there? You're not saying let them go, but you're
Mm-hmm.
using the numbers as a base to say, let's have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can justify them, it's you that's putting your neck out and saying
Mm-hmm.
yes, because you see something that I can't. And I don't believe in the HR culture, which everyone is GitLab like focused and Jira tickets, how's that, and all of this stuff, right? But you're
Mm-hmm.
using basic metrics to say is that, especially when it comes to management meetings, when you're talking from a management perspective on a monthly basis to everyone, right? You're saying like, okay, like what happens? What should we do? And then it's like you're just picking easy KPIs that don't involve the whole business having to come into one, connect to one thing that we have to pay a ton of money for. You're just saying, look, based on these simple facts, I can't see the results.
Mm-hmm.
So what's happening? And
Mm-hmm.
how come, and then you iteratively, yeah, over time, maybe 10 years down the line, you've got a perfect system of a person that works perfectly for you, right? But in reality, like at the start, you're just using the numbers to say, I'm going to challenge you on this because that's my role. And if you don't feel empowered to let that person go because you've developed a good relationship, then that is my role as well. And I'm happy. I'm never happy. Like it's never fun letting someone go. But my ethos is always that it may not be right for that person to be here. And I think
Yeah.
it's a hindrance, especially like you're looking at a lot of like, so we've looked at internships in the past, we've looked at people from different countries and also looked at graduates. There's a certain kind of graduate that works at a startup, but they don't always tend to come from the best schools. They don't
Mm-hmm.
actually tend to be the most qualified, and they
Mm-hmm.
don't actually tend to interview well, but
Mm-hmm.
they're grafters.
Mm-hmm.
And they're the ones that have randomly found you on LinkedIn and spammed you with about 1 billion messages, and they sent you over their GitLab code, which you can see. Also, one bit of advice for anyone going into applying for jobs: if you send your GitLab repository, please make sure you're uploading to it, because the amount of time I've seen, like,
Seriously.
yeah, the amount of time I've seen like university students saying like, oh, here's my GitLab, like it's my personal GitLab, and then
Uh-huh.
it's like, just don't put it in if you don't use it all the time and you only used it for a dissertation. I'm just like, this is what have you just, I liked you, but now I'm just like, you've given me a reason to check, and it's just like, no. But I think, yeah, it's usually the grafters. I love the people that have maybe not done so well in school, but you can actually see they've built
Mm-hmm.
something. They
Mm-hmm.
were in sportsbook. It could be they built a trading module. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if you did that well in university. I don't really care what university you went to. But if
Mm-hmm.
you can show me your work, then I can go to Steve and say, look, they've actually done something here. Like they're super passionate about this. Why? Because they put above like just sending me their CV in there. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where it all comes down to who you're looking for, and I think you really need to start to understand sort of the type of people that work well.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's not bad bad thing to hire the wrong people. Like it's going to happen, right? Like you're always, as a startup, you can't pay the stupid amounts of money that everyone seems to be paying these days, but
Of course.
you can try and find an edge, which is we believe that these type of people work, so let's just give them a go. And if it doesn't work in 3 months, then yeah, you know that
Mm-hmm.
that person's not right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Mm-hmm.
that's just how I feel.
Well, at some point you said that you confront the person with the data, and obviously you strike to me as a person who like calculates everything. Like I can imagine that you even before you wake up in the morning, even before you go to the office or start working, you have like a set of data telling you what's the day going to be about. Joking, obviously, but as a my impression of a typical startup, which was founded like more or less a year ago, is that there's no data whatsoever. I
Hmm.
mean, there's just a bunch of people. Everybody's super passionate about the product or the service, but all the processes, all the procedures, all the data is just being forgotten because everybody's like running somewhere. Sometimes they don't really know where, but everybody's running. Um, so if that's not a secret, what kind of data you have right now, which looks inside of your company, not really on the market, but what kind
Hmm.
of data do you analyze to verify to do the health check of the company?
Yeah, I mean, look, like I'm not going to say we have tons of data on it, and I think I have the ethos that how can we how can we give ourselves KPIs without having to do too much of a check, right? I don't like the huge company mentality where you need to spend a week trying to verify data that isn't
Mm.
isn't there, right? But I think it comes down to core. We use GitLab a lot, and ultimately we can kind of validate and verify. Okay, through that we also use a platform called Linear, so we can start to understand. Linear is just another version of Jira. It's just
Okay.
we prefer it. But again, like this is just easy ways that when we bring someone on, it's just you're just pulling the data that you know is there. We're not trying to pull it out of thin air. We're not trying to kind of make sure that we can let someone go just to
Hmm.
justify letting them go.
Hmm.
All we're doing is trying to help. As I've learned, like tech people are not always so empowered to let people go. And I think because they see what is possible and what might be possible with this person in say 1 to 2 years, right? But I think if I'm blessed to actually have a founder that's very honest, right? He's honest to his detriment to a certain degree sometimes. But I think like for that, he's very good at understanding. Okay, this person's maybe not at the standard I want, and then okay, let's just maybe give him the benefit of the doubt and
Hmm.
see. Like, let's actually look into the metrics that we can see. Maybe they're obviously tech people are not exactly the most out there socially sometimes. So let's actually see if the work is actually better than what he's coming out with, like speaking. And obviously sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, right? And I think that's where we always. I think what I'm trying to do is always trying to justify a little bit of with the data, with numbers, with validation to say if we can just try and create simple processes now that are scalable and achievable, then no one we ever, and again, it comes down to the core principles, but these guys see that I'm using some metrics to evaluate my decisions and what we are
Hmm.
doing. Even when we make commercial decisions, we still trying to validate it for where it can go. And I think then it trickles down into a business that actually starts to think about things. And I think it's great in the startup world that everyone's running like a headless chicken into nothingness, right? But I think there are times where you have to take a step back and look and go, actually, because is that really the best use of our time?
Hmm.
Like us doing a million things for a million different customers, like does it actually make sense for us to do it, or do we need to hire? And I think sometimes you do need to take a step back and go, is your time being used best? Is this person supporting you?
Hmm.
Why can't this person do it? I can't see much from this person. Like, what is it that you feel you can't? Because I think as a startup, every founder feels like it's his baby. So handing over the baby, especially with a code base, like we have a product that's like heavily code based, so it's like, oh, they feel they can't hand it over. But I think it's just trying to push where the core value within the business is and making sure that the key people that we need to keep going are actually
Mhm.
focused on that, not,
Mhm.
oh, can like customers will always come in with new requests, but does that bring additional value? Yeah, it
Mhm.
brings monetary value, but does it actually bring us value in the long term? Okay, no. Then maybe we can either say no, or we can hire, or we can consult. There are so many options to do, but I think to get to that stage, you need to take a step back and go, what's the best way to do this, and then take
Mhm.
it from there. Really.
I have just one tip to whoever is listening to us. Sometimes when we at Create IT, when we had to let somebody go and the data was not really giving you like a good background for any kind of decision. Me and Alex, my partner, we set up this rule that the more we talk about a person, the more we have this habit of having lunches together with Alex, and we just at some point we realized that on every second lunch we are talking about one particular employee, and there's a rule that hey, the more we talk about somebody, the more we should let that person go. If data doesn't give you like a clear answer. So maybe that rule would help somebody. And that leads me to the question. I think that's going to be last question. How do you build your relationship with your partner? So what I'm trying to say is that um, do you consciously build some kind of framework of what do you do together, what you don't do together, what topics you talk about, what you don't talk about, how much time you spend with each other, and how to what extent do you share all your thoughts and all that? Is it like a consciously built framework, or is it like as it goes?
I think it depends on the founder. It's like I think it depends on who you have. It's kind of like I mean, I think I spend more time with my founder than I do with my wife, right? So it's kind of
Yeah.
like a relationship. Um, so I think we have evolved over time, right? We figured out, I think, midpoint through, like where who has the final say on what. So it's very much trying to make sure that we're a product organization, that the company doesn't keep changing directions based on commercial and based on this,
Mhm.
but that it is thought about, right? So when it comes to commercial decisions and are we going to sign this contract even with this level of funding or financing from the company, right? That is always going to be a decision that comes from me, right? But I think very early on with some of the advisors and founders that we spoke to, I do think one thing that I would give advice to anyone setting up a business with another person is make sure you have an honest to God conversation with them about what's going to really piss you off. Like,
Mhm.
is it if I make a product decision, you're gonna be royally pissed even though I can't code? Like, is that gonna piss you off? And I think I would say over time you would get used to, okay, where do you come in? But I wouldn't be afraid to challenge each other. I think as founders, and this goes away from the VCs and investments and advisors, like you two should be arguing. You're so passionate
Mhm.
about what you're
Mhm.
doing at the
Mhm.
early stages. You need to be passionate, and passionate comes with arguments, comes with quarrels, comes with things. But at the end of the day, go away, sleep on it, come back the next day, and it's like nothing will ever change. And I think that's where, for us, it was aligning on what are the core elements of my responsibility versus what are the core elements of say Steve's.
Mhm.
And then I think it's also making sure that I know who's responsible for the product, where does he want to go? Take me on the passion with him. And I think that's where so we do meet daily. And we also have like quite a big catch up on a Wednesday, right? So it's trying to put out time to make sure that you're speaking about the company and where it goes. But I'd also say like, and this is maybe a bit of advice that no one tells you, it's make sure your founder's good personally wise. There are so many
Oh
issues
yeah.
when it comes to the startup journey. Everyone's emotions are up and down like a yo-yo. like it's very hard for on everyone, and I think it's very easy as a founder to become selfish, like, oh, only I'm struggling, only I'm grafting, only I'm doing this, because you're in it. You're also getting moaned at by everyone else, but it's also understanding how's your founder doing, how's their relationships going. If you want to look at it selfishly, how's the productivity going to go? If you want to look at it from a personal perspective, it's just that situation of just being human. And I
Mhm.
think when you're a founder, especially when you're running on all cylinders and you go, 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 it's very easy to forget that we're all just human beings trying to work together to do something. I think
Mhm.
honesty, not being afraid to have arguments is a big
Yeah.
factor, and just being real with each other, not trying to bullshit.
Yeah.
You should never BS your partner, but you,
Yeah.
like, obviously there's things that you can say, but again, it's just being honest and making sure that you know how they're feeling and what they want to do. I think that
Yeah.
that's kind of the critical element.
Yeah, I cannot agree more. I mean, honesty and being like open with everything which is on your mind. Um, I think that's a way to create like a really long lasting kind of relationship with your partner. And I fully agree with you. I mean, with my partner, with Alex, I definitely spend more time than with any of my girlfriends that I had in the last 20 years. So, uh, so yeah. And there's this funny saying that there are two reasons why partnerships, like business partnerships, why they fail. One reason is a lack of success, and the other reason is a major success.
Yeah,
so, and I kind of agree with it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Josh Gibbs, that was a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for your
it
time.
was great to speak to you, Bartek. Honestly, as always, lovely. Thank you.